RCMP in Coutts arrested 2 more people on top of those initial 11, one for attempting to ram police vehicles and another arriving at the protest with guns. For Sheikh, he'll be watching for more charges.
The threat of violence and the threat or actual use of violence against government in an effort to overturn its policies, that's literally the definition of terrorism.
And curious if the U.S. will be involved, given what could have been so close to the border.
I have no doubt that to city slickers, seeing that many weapons and that many bullets is terrifying, especially since they were covered in camouflage colorings. But if you look at those are really just bullets and rifles that pretty much every household in the Lethbridge area has. This is not downtown Toronto where only criminals have guns and typically have handguns. This is rural small town Alberta. Everyone has a rifle or a shotgun for hunting, for dealing with varmints on the farm or the ranch is part of the culture here. So arresting men and finding that they have several guns and hundreds of bullets may be shocking to downtown Toronto and to Liberal voters, but it actually was proof of nothing in itself. But that, combined with the RCMP narrative, was exactly what Justin Trudeau needed. And as you may recall, within a day, Trudeau had his fig leaf to cover up his invocation of the Emergencies Act, a kind of martial law that stripped people of their civil liberties, including seizing hundreds of bank accounts of peaceful protesters. Well, I'm here in Lethbridge today to cover the trial of those 4 men. However, the trial will not actually happen for nearly 1 more year. The events in question were in January and February 2002. It's now almost August 22. It's now almost August 2023, and the trial is not scheduled until spring. It's going to be a trial by judge and jury. The jury has yet to be empaneled. And one of the things about a jury trial is the jury cannot have preconceptions about the case. They can't get facts from the media or other sources. They have to get facts put through the legal process. Why? Because certain facts are hearsay. Certain facts are so prejudicial that it's impossible to get a fair trial. Sometimes in trials, entire court cases are moved to another city if the local jury pool is too tainted. To avoid that in this case, the defense counsel have applied for and received a publication ban over some of the more lascivious details contained in part in a legal document filed by police to get the search warrant. That document is called an ITO, an information to obtain. It's a document shown to a judge in secret, as in the target of the search warrant is obviously not there. Search warrants don't really work well if the person who's going to be searched gets a heads up about it. So the documents that were filed with the court were very lengthy and contain unchallenged accusations by the police. The trouble with that is that the defense lawyers were not there in that search warrant hearing to rebut or refute or challenge or question or criticize. So it's a very special kind of hearing called ex parte. In Latin, that means without the other party. There's a saying in law, hear the other side, audi alterum partem. It's really a fundamental in our justice system. You always have to hear the other side. That simply doesn't work in search warrants. And so that is why the one-sided accusations by the police are being kept out of the public eye until the jury is empaneled. But that means it's impossible for us to tell you the details, at least as alleged by police, about what the 4 men in question did. Why were they charged with conspiracy to commit murder, but no other truckers were charged with those same things? They were charged with minor offenses like mischief or obstruction. Why were these 4 men charged with something differently, and how solid are the charges? As we know from our own 2 reporters being in the smuggler's saloon for more than a week, that place was crawling with cops. Not just police wearing their RCMP uniforms, but obviously undercover agents too, listening, chatting up the men. In the case of female police officers, maybe batting their eyelashes at the men and seeing what they might say after a few drinks to show off a bit. And that's another question. If these men said certain things, was it their true belief, or were they hamming it up for police, hamming it up to look tough? Sometimes people enlarge their stories to be a little more heroic or a little more brave. The thing is, we can't see that information. It's either being redacted to begin with, or it's subject to a publication ban. We cannot weigh the facts of this case until the trial begins and the facts are introduced in that manner. That makes it very difficult, and it also makes it difficult for the people gathered here to understand why this case is different in various ways, including one very important way. These men are still in prison. Arthur Pawlowski and Tamara Leach were jailed for an atrociously long period of time, about 50 days each. They were held without bail, but in the end they did get bail. There were some conditions put on them. They're not allowed to talk to this person or travel to that place. But in the end, they did get bail. It was an embarrassment for the judicial system how long it took. It showed that justice is not quite impartial, and it certainly looked punitive. But at the end of the day, every other person charged or ticketed or arrested during the lockdowns was given bail. In fact, most were not arrested at all. Why are these 4 men still in prison some 500 days after arrest and staring down the barrel at another 400 plus days in prison? They'll be in jail 1,000 days before their trial. You know, I saw news the other day that a convicted terrorist, let me say that again, not an accused terrorist, a terrorist who had her trial and was convicted and sentenced and then was let out, was charged with terrorism-related offenses again and was given bail. Canada is the country that gives bail to literal convicted, not just accused, but convicted terrorists on their second offense. And yet these 4 men are still in jail. Why? Well, that's the trouble. We can't tell you, because to do so would be to breach the publication ban. I was in court yesterday. There was a preliminary matter about whether or not one of the 4 men, when they gave a confession to police, if they were compelled in some unfair manner to do so. The judge ruled on that, saying no, the confession was given freely. There are preliminary matters like this that will continue on this week. They may or may not have an important effect on the course of the trial. Still in the morning, we haven't gone in and heard them yet. But I think that we are in for a long slog. There is an enormous amount of evidence. I've seen some of it heavily redacted, but there were literally dozens of police involved in preparing the case against these men. I understand that there are terabytes worth of evidence, whether it's wiretaps or police reports or just visual observations, and it's an enormous amount to go through. We don't know, or at least we're not able to say what's going on, and that makes it difficult for people to understand what they feel is an apparent injustice and double standard. I think that one of the problems is giving the justice system the benefit of the doubt is something that these people long ago left behind. They saw how the police became political weapons during the lockdown, enforcing things that have nothing to do with the criminal law. When police enforced unscientific mask mandates, when police enforced ridiculous 6 feet of separation social gathering rules, the police torched their credibility. The justice system, which has yet to strike down a single lockdown law, a single vaccine mandate law, has simply put lost the benefit of the doubt amongst people, or at least people who are dissidents, who are contrarians, who would call themselves freedom-oriented Canadians. They gave the lockdownists and their police enforcers the benefit of the doubt for the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. When it turned into 2 years, their benefit of the doubt giving was long over. And so people here who cannot see the facts alleged against the 4 accused men certainly aren't willing to believe that it's a fair case. Only time will tell when the facts come out in trial. I'm going to go into the court, and I'm going to do my best to live tweet the proceedings. I don't think it will be very substantive. Like I say, the trial is almost a year away. But I'll come out and I'll let you know what I see, and then I'll give you my thoughts as best I can without stepping on the publication ban of what I think.
Liberalite media made it. Good job, bud.
You can see that there are some people here who are upset that Rebel News is not championing these 4 men. I've had a few encounters like that. Someone who, by the looks of them, would probably be a Rebel News supporter and probably was until recently. They don't understand why we're not crowdfunding for these men. And in some ways, I can't tell you that because of the publication ban. What I can tell you is that the money raised by both Rebel News and the Democracy Fund was to defend people for civil liberties offenses, people who committed civil disobedience. As you may know, because you may be a donor yourself, we did not crowdfund to defend people accused of conspiracy to commit murder. Now, there is a crowdfunding page not run by us that if you want to give to these four men, you can certainly do so. And I'm not here to tell you to do so or not to do so. But I can explain that neither Rebel News nor the Democracy Fund will take our donors' money for men who are charged with conspiracy to commit murder. And when the facts come out in the trial, you may see for yourself whether or not this was a wise decision on our part. But you can see the frustration that someone who, just by the looks of them, would probably be a Rebel News supporter in every other way, that they don't understand why we're not throwing our lot in with these men. And unfortunately, it's against the law for me to tell you on camera why that is. I'm going to go back in now, and I'll come back during a break to give you more of my report. That's my report. For all of my reports on today's subject, you can go to rebelfieldreports.com. And I've also filmed an entire episode of the Ezra Levant Show. That's my paywalled show. You can find that at rebelnewsplus.com. That's how to subscribe. And it was a heavy show, but there were two light moments when someone interrupted my little monologue here. And I thought those were interesting as well, and I kept them both in. That's it from here. On behalf of all of us at Rebel News, keep fighting for freedom.